What up, my fellow Knicks fans? This is your guy Marcellus Ease, and don't panic quite yet. Now, even though the Knicks have taken a commanding lead in this series, in this segment, we're going to cover this a little bit different. Just get into more of a nuanced bag of some of the issues that have been kind of popping up throughout the regular season. For instance, in Game 4, the Knicks were out-rebounded and shot much worse from the field, and that's excluding three-point range. Guys struggled finishing in and around the paint. And worst of all, they were outscored from the bench once again, 22-5 in Game 4. And this has been an ongoing issue throughout the series, as they've been outscored in Game 1, 30-22, in Game 2, 38-8, and in Game 3, 40-9. So there's quite a few things to clean up before going into the next round and going up against a more polished Boston Celtics. But hey, I'm not going to say no more. Let's just get to it.
As much as they're fighting for their city, we're trying to fight for our city. So I think this is a great series for the NBA. I think it kind of gives a little bit of old school vibes. I think that this is great, for kids watching who haven't been able to see old school basketball, to see this kind of reminiscent game of old school physicality. And I'm just honored to be part of it.
I'll go right.
Before we get to the game film, we're going to cover this a little different, get more nuance, because a few things in this particular game just kept popping up throughout the regular season. Now, for those of you that remember the Christmas game against the San Antonio Spurs, the Knicks were not only unable to stop the pick and pop, with some of the Spurs perimeter players, especially Wemby, going off from three, but they allowed the Spurs to control most of the game as they were up 109-94 with 7 minutes left. But within those last 7 minutes of the quarter, they went on a 20-12 run to close out the game. And that Christmas Day victory resembled the scenarios that played out in Game 4. The Knicks were down 11 with 8 minutes left in the game, and they completely took over, scoring 26 points, out-executing the inexperienced Detroit Pistons. And that same inexperience played out in the Christmas Day game, as the Spurs had a few mental lapses, poor communication on defense. Vessel had a bad entry pass. Trey Jones blew an easy layup. They missed open threes. They didn't box out on key defensive rebounds. It's just not paying attention to key details, as those are things we normally see from young teams. That's why I say that victory from Game 4 was kind of fool's gold. And situations like this have been plaguing the Knicks all season long. Just listen to Victor Wembanyama describe in the post-game presser his team's fourth quarter meltdown.
I'm thinking about the game right now, and just thinking we're close, but we lack some attributes at times, and we were right there. It was a really disputed game, but I don't think it was a game about momentum. I think it was a game about being dogs when the clock starts going down, under 5 minutes and 3 minutes. We let them get some rebounds on us. We let them move us a little too much. So this is more what it was about. They didn't win against us because they played better basketball. Not at all.
It does feel good that the Knicks have a commanding lead in this series, but you got to ask yourself, how far of a gap is it that this series could have been flipped in reverse? With the Pistons having a commanding lead, it went down to the wire in games 1, 3, and 4. Pistons had an 8-point lead in the fourth quarter in Game 1, and for Game 3, they were only down 3 points with 5 minutes left, and in Game 4, they led by 11 with 8 minutes left. So this series is not far from things being flipped upside down, and the Knicks being able to leverage another team's inexperience in closing moments. That will not be the case in round 2. Now, just taking a look at some of the Pistons' issues outside of just Cade making his fourth quarter mistakes. Look how Duran secures his rebound, but brings it right to his waist and gives the Knicks another opportunity. And had he secured that rebound, they would be up 6 with the ball. Now, I know this may seem small, but this was a huge momentum shift in the quarter as the Knicks were able to cut into the lead. And for Jalen Duran, his lessons continued, as right here, we're seeing Tim Hardaway Jr., he should be a little bit more lower right here because Duren is not fast enough to close out on Towns. But Duren is kind of covering in case Josh Hart tries to backdoor, because right now Harris has to kind of help out with Dennis Schroeder being outmatched by OG. That's a mismatch right there. But look at Duren. Tim Hardaway Jr., again, should a little bit more in between the defenders right here. He's way too close to just Mikal. But again, this is something that Duren should have probably called out. But these guys are just learning on the fly. You see Duren is just completely caught off guard. Yeah, he's not fast enough to close that out. Here's Jalen Duren once again in game 3. The Pistons needing a stop. They down 5. And just Duren and his awareness on the court. Cade is his low man right here. Josh Hart is who he's guarding. We know Josh Hart is not exactly a three-point shooter necessarily, but he's got to close these gaps. And these are things he's going to have to read much earlier in the possession. He just sort of stunts in and allows JB to get the layup. Again, Jalen Duren, a lot of mistakes in the opening round of this series in game 2, and just him as the roll man. He's not good at this position right here. Just another turnover. A lot of costly turnovers from him. That's why I say a lot of these concepts are going to translate into round 2, because going up against the Celtics, this is going to be Al Horford. He has much better on-court awareness of where to be, and also him as a roller. He can shoot, he can finish himself, and he's smart enough to know who to kick out to. So a lot of the sloppy things that showed up in this round is going to have to be cleaned up. Now, another mistake the Pistons made in closing out that fourth quarter when the Knicks dropped, 26 points in the last 8 minutes, is right here, just letting Ausar Thompson cook in this possession. The game is starting to get tight. The Knicks are kind of already on a run, and Ausar has been cold at this point. I'm surprised they let him go one-on-one like this in isolation. But again, Cade doesn't have much options on the floor. Just look who's out there. None of these guys going from game to game in a whole playoff series is gonna be as consistent. So we're starting to see where Cade is trapped, because Cade can't do everything in the closing moments of these games. His energy level got to be unreal unless he goes to the back and hop on one of them PEDs. But Ausar in these closing moments, he's had quite a few mishaps. I mean, that's when he's actually not in foul trouble. But for now, these things are kind of cute. But make no mistake about it, Ausar Thompson and Cade Cunningham will be an issue in the Eastern Conference going forward. They're only gaining more experience, and they've shown, especially Cade Cunningham, that he could handle quite a few things, even though, his teammates are not quite up to par. So the more polished players they put around him, he's going to be a problem in that Eastern Conference. I expect his assisting to be up and his shot making to be much more improved, especially his pull-up game. He's in the same situation Jalen Brunson was in a couple of seasons ago when he first came to the Knicks. You have a great playmaker who doesn't necessarily have the key pieces around him to open up his game. Brunson didn't have the proper shooters, the proper spacing, and now with the Karl Anthony Towns addition to the team, we've seen Brunson's game unlock into a whole new level. The pull-up game is insane. The ability for him to go one-on-one and get to his spots is a lot easier. The spacing is much better. And him just having perimeter players like Josh Hart, Mikal Bridges, OG Anunoby, who could read the floor properly and know when to make their cuts. And them also having the ability to actually finish at the cup. That was one of RJ Barrett's problems. He wasn't quite the rim finisher the Knicks needed him to be. So with Cade Cunningham being at 6'6", you're starting to see where the situation's parallel. And who knows, because of his stature, his ceiling could be a lot higher than JB. We've seen him post up OG Anunoby plenty of times in this series. But him getting a lot of those tough buckets came in the third quarter. I mean, he was doing everything for the Pistons to bring him back into the game. He scored 12 points. He had 6 rebounds and 5 assists, just making tough layups. He took advantage of Cat a couple of times and his lazy defense during that third quarter. And this was during a stretch while the Pistons weren't really shooting well. I mean, just look at him right here off this rebound. It looks like a shot. He fakes it. A nice pass to get an additional open shot. I don't know what it is about these third quarters where the team starts to get stagnant. Once again, in this game, we only scored 14 points. The Knicks kind of fell into the trap of just playing Detroit Pistons basketball, just going up and down, fast pace, not really playing the half court game, going one-on-one and just meeting 2 or 3 guys at the rim. It being so fast paced and physical, the Knicks went from a 7-point lead to start the quarter all the way to being down by 7 to end the quarter. This in a way is where sort of the bench unit comes in, and them having no impact for virtually the whole series has led to the starters really being heavily relied on. It's just back-to-back games where this has been an issue. Knicks were up 14 in game 3, just for them to allow the Pistons to go on a 20-9 run and them being down by the end of the third quarter. Issues like these are not going to carry well over into the next series because the Celtics, they got the 6th man of the year in Pritchard. Hauser comes in and scores points. Same thing for Lou Cornett. He can pass and he can score. I mean, they got guys all over. KP sometimes come off the bench. Same thing for Al Horford. They got a bunch of guys on this team that can just come in and impact the game. And the Knicks being just so top heavy with the starters. Tibbs is really going to have to find a sweet spot to rotate some of the starters with the bench unit to keep the offensive flow going. Okay, so hopping back to the fourth quarter and dealing with the Pistons and their issues with closing out these games. We already seen their limited options with allowing Asar Thompson to go one-on-one, even though he was cold. And Cunningham, just like in games 1 and 3, he continues to have issues going down the stretch and is unable to keep his turnovers down. That's really been the difference in this series. Brunson, on the other hand, is actually converting and executing in very key pivotal moments. Cunningham, just like Jalen Brunson in his first season with the Knicks in game 6 in Miami, he's going to have to go one-on-one a lot and make a lot of tough contested shots. Cade again dealing with a lack of options. Look how OG just shoves Dennis Schroeder. JB does a great job hedging right here while OG just recovers. Yeah, this is a lot for Cade to deal with. This is a young player once again. He's going to take a tough contested shot right here. Just in and out. And one thing in this series that you got to love is the fact that it highlighted the Knicks' depth and how much perimeter defenders that they have. It's been a great combination of multiple efforts from Mikal, OG, Deuce McBride, Josh Hart, and even the extra efforts and attention to details from Jalen Brunson and Karl Anthony Towns hedging or just getting in the way of Cade just going downhill to the hoop. And we can see it play out with the Knicks defending the 1-point lead. Cade gets the switch, gets OG off of him, but he still got to deal with a lot. Josh Hart with a beautiful strip. And look at the lineup out there. No matter who Cade switches on, we got Deuce, OG, Josh Hart, Mikal, and then he has to meet Mitch at the cup if he gets past anybody. That's a hell of a task for a young player just going through his progressions in the playoffs. And don't get it fucked up. Cade had his opportunities to put the game away. Right here's a clean look. But it will all come with time and experience for Cade, because Jalen Brunson, on the other hand, he was in his bag off rip. And that's what playoff experience does to players. Keep in mind, Jalen Brunson was in the Western Conference Finals with Luka the season before he joined the Knicks. And they also relied on him for about 2 to 3 games going up against Donovan Mitchell in the Utah Jazz series. So when you're looking at JB, you're seeing the culmination of a number of things. We got a sprinkle on top of that, him going up against the Miami Heat in a series where none of the starters were really giving anything other than him on the offensive end. And this is going up against Eric Spoelstra, who's really a coach when it's all said and done, will probably end up on the level of Greg Popovich. But even back then, they were unable to stop him. And that was just a warning from Jalen Brunson to the rest of the league. And last season is where everything came together and was pretty much undeniable when it came to Jalen Brunson. The Knicks went through a number of injuries during the regular season. He did not have as many weapons on the roster, but that did not matter. JB put everything on his back, especially in the months of February, March, and April. And him wearing that load carried over into the playoffs. Completely overwhelming at the time, the reigning MVP in the Philadelphia 76ers. They could have as many excuses as they want. The Knicks were depleted with injuries. and Jalen Brunson carried them right over Joel Embiid. So JB has definitely been in the lab, and he's used to carrying the workload a certain way and without certain help. Most importantly, keep that in mind, without the help. So with the additions of Mikal and Karl Anthony Towns, things are going to come a lot easier. Definitely can't forget those two. Mikal played great defense down the stretch, making timely three-point shots even though he didn't shoot well. And when things got extra tight, Karl Anthony Towns came through with the extra momentum stopping buckets. Let's not forget that when we look back in this series, Karl Anthony Towns was able to knock down some buckets to stop a lot of the momentum the Pistons had in games 3 and 4. But it is what it is. A lot of things are going to have to get cleaned up. The bench scoring is going to have to participate a little bit more than it has, because in this series, man, we've been getting our asses kicked with the bench points. And without the even balanced scoring from Cat, Bridges, OG, and Brunson, it would have been a completely different story. And the third quarters, when things kind of get tight or stagnant, can Tibbs kind of pivot? Because with the Pistons, we kind of fell into their up and down game during games 3 and 4. And with the Boston Celtics, that's not going to really work as well. They love to spread the floor. Their defense loves to set up. Can we pivot from what they actually don't like to do? And what schemes will Tibbs actually come up with? That's one thing I'm going to be on the lookout for. But we'll see how it plays out. Hopefully the Knicks end up closing this out quick, because the Pistons, unfortunately for them, they just don't have enough experience. But until next time, you fellas stay safe